I don't even know what I'm doing on this stage, to be honest. Really, I don't. It's such an incredible honor to be here, to be with everyone. And before we start, I just want to say that I really think that this room, this space, these worlds of technology and politics are at the center of history right now.
Yes.
Technology is transforming politics. Politics is transforming technology. And I think that if you don't really leverage that synergy correctly, change can look very differently, one way or the other. So again, thank you so much for having us. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
Before we start, just to make sure that everyone's awake, although obviously you are, we're going to start with rapid fire questions. Okay. Short answers.
I'll do my best.
Okay. I know it's politics, but. Okay, you're from Wisconsin.
Yes.
So I'm automatically thinking cheese and beer.
Yep.
What's your favorite cheese and beer?
Burrata, cheese.
Oh.
Kind of gooey in the middle.
Okay.
Well, what you saw me drinking with Seth Meyers was Spotted Cow, which is kind of the amazing. So you've heard of it, all right. You have to come to Wisconsin to drink it, just by the way. But I also like craft IPAs.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, I do.
The combination. You're always on the road, you're always working. What's your favorite way to disconnect?
Sewing projects and DIY carpentry projects.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, in a feminist utopia, who's our leader?
Isn't this a feminist utopia?
Like
right now?
I think so.
There's no followers. We're all leaders.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or maybe you are that leader. We know that healthcare is what got you into public service. Mm-hmm. So Medicare for all, yes or no?
Yes, but we have, it got me into politics because I was a child without insurance with a serious illness and then uninsurable, and it's like, that's wrong. We have to keep moving in the direction of covering everyone, lowering costs, and increasing quality. And Medicare for all certainly brings us in that direction, and so do other things. So we gotta, all of the above, we gotta move in that direction.
Okay. You have said that you're not running for president. Are you sure? Oh, really? I mean that.
I'm sure, but there's this Tammy 2020, and
we felt
that I keep seeing. They keep trying to lure me in, but no, I'm not running for president.
Okay. Any 2020 presidential favorite?
Well, I'll tell you, I am like, the only thing that I'm waiting for right now it's less anticipation than this meeting, but the DNC is going to announce where the next Democratic National Convention is, right. And Milwaukee, Wisconsin is in the running. And we're just like, yes. And if we get it, and even if we don't get it, I think that I want to see every one of our Democratic candidates coming through Wisconsin, sort of figuring out the recipe to win. And I've always said, Wisconsin is a key state in the Electoral College. Trump won last time, so we got to change it around. Yeah, so I'm very excited about the 2020 races. Yeah.
You passed the test. I was gonna not ask you this, but the L-word is coming back. Are you excited about that?
Well, of course, but I just recently found that it was coming back because I'm
Shane Carmen.
I know.
Oh, yeah.
So, do we get to hear what happened in the intervening years? I mean, oh my goodness, this is
okay. Wait, you officially passed the test. We're done. We're gonna move to the questions.
Okay.
All right. Okay.
Thank you.
So we saw in the video, obviously, your name carries many firsts. No? You're the first openly gay woman ever to be elected in Congress. You're Wisconsin's first female senator. You're the Senate's first openly gay member. That's incredible. But I've also heard that in the past you've said that you weren't necessarily elected because you had a women's agenda or an LGBTQ agenda, but because you had a people's agenda. So my question is, do you think that we're at a time where one has to unapologetically own their identity in order to normalize equality, right? Like, do we have to be unapologetically us, unapologetically queer, or does that have a cost? Does that alienate people?
Well, I certainly don't think they're inconsistent.
Okay.
It's like once you come out, it's hard to put that, make it a secret again. And I remember the early struggles I had, and I was just out of college. I was thinking about running for local office, and I truly believed, because of the lack of role models, that I would have to make a choice between going into public service or living my life as an out lesbian with integrity, and then kind of figured out I could do both. Mm-hmm. And that doing both didn't mean I was going to lose elections. I did both on one, right? Yeah. And I talk a lot about how we are better governed when our government and our legislative bodies reflect America. And so that's increasingly changing. When we are elected and when we have more diverse Senates and House of Representatives, we all bring our life experiences into our work. I liken it like you don't check it at the door like a coat check or something, right? And it informs my experiences with, whether it's discrimination, or I was an attorney representing people who had faced discrimination in various settings. For those who are moms, for those who have experienced sexual harassment or sexual assault, we need those people at the table, all of us making decisions, policy that better reflects reality. And so, in the course of an election, I think it's really important to talk about what your life experience will add to the deliberative body, but I also think that it's critical that we talk to the issues that people are concerned about of the day. And in my case, it's also my healthcare story. Right. That is my life experience, as well as being an out lesbian. Right. It is so many. You carry
that with you wherever.
Yeah, exactly.
So you've clearly already cracked the glass ceiling, and now, because of that, because of all these years, and because of everyone in this room, Congress looks very different. There's more women elected. There's more women of color elected. There's more queer folks elected. You walk the halls of Capitol Hill every single day, but so how do you see and how are you feeling that power is changing? Can you describe that for us?
So I absolutely see that the difference between being in the room and at the table and not. Even just the few years I've been in the Senate, our ranks have grown as women. We're now 25%. Now we should be a lot more than that. But and then the presidential race, where there's not one, but there's 6 women running for president, or 5 running for president. There's going to be more. I mean, that's, wow. It changes the conversation, and there's so many ways to put this in a sort of, little analogy, but when you're in the room, the conversation is with us. And when you're outside the room, the conversation is about us. And that makes all the difference. The more comical one is, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. Yeah. And you don't necessarily want to be on the menu.
So is there a chance now to pass the Equality Act, which I know is a piece of legislation that you've changed?
Yes.
Can you describe exactly what that entails?
Sure. So a few years ago, we decided to take an all-new approach to LGBTQ plus equality in policy. And rather than doing it piecemeal, like employment discrimination, educational discrimination, and all of this, this approach in the Equality Act is to amend the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and add sexual orientation and gender identity to those provisions. And it's, I was going to say next month, but it's March. So this month, we're going to be reintroducing it in the Senate. It's got a House, wonderful House version. And because the House has changed partisan control, Democrats are now in control of the House, it is almost certainly going to get a vote and pass in the House of Representatives. Wow. So, and why does it matter? Well, we're all from different parts of this country, and there are many states that still have no protections. And many states, like Wisconsin, have some protections on the basis of sexual orientation, but have not taken the step to include gender identity. And we rely for protection on a patchwork of municipal or corporate policies in the workplace, and that's not good enough. If we're going to have full equality, it needs to happen at the national level. Now, so it'll be historic when it passes the House. But I have a feeling we have more work to do in 2020 before we get it through the whole, through the Senate and get a president who will sign it into law. And that's why, great stuff happened in 2018, including in Wisconsin. No one's letting up, right? Exactly. No one's letting up.
Speaking of the Senate and how hard things can be, let's talk about men for a second. So you're not only part of the Senate Committee on Commerce, Transportation, and Science, but I know that your grandfather was also a scientist.
Yes.
You were a math major. So then...
Did you know that?
Okay, so then knowing all of this, you clearly come from a fact-based perspective. How do you then rationalize with people like Senator Ted Cruz, who don't believe in climate change, who don't believe in science? How do you get people like that, and I'm sure we've all been in those spaces, no? How do you get them to see truth?
It is, I want to just take it a little bigger than just, because all the things you can say about him, he is smart. And so you just kind of are stunned. And I think it moves to the disproportionate amount of power and influence that certain outside individuals and corporations have, that they can spend so much money on elections and lobbying, that they can have so much influence that otherwise smart people don't see the facts and the reality in front of us. And that is a problem that we have to tackle if we're going to value the science and the evidence, and if we're going to value the voices of people. This is such a critical issue. Everyone here knows it. It's existential to our planet. It shows how difficult it's been to think beyond tomorrow. Imagine Congress standing up and saying, we're doing this for generations that haven't even been born yet, because we know that that's our responsibility. I will say of men, and even Republican men, that I want to share a heartwarming story. It was one that I actually couldn't tell because I respected the confidences of the conversations between members, and you'll hear in a moment why else I wanted to keep it confidential, but it was Jeff Flake, and his son told the story to a reporter, so it's like, okay, now I can tell this story.
It's out.
Before we adopted the approach of fighting for the Equality Act, we had a bill called ENDA, the Employment Non-Discrimination Act. And yes, and in my first year in the Senate, 2013, the Senate had a vote on it. We were in Democratic control, and it passed, meaning it got the supermajority of Democrats and Republicans, and it was inclusive of sexual orientation and gender identity. And Jeff Flake, while he was uncomfortable with the bill, he had voted for a sexual orientation only ENDA in the House, but now he was in the Senate. He was uncomfortable with expanding to include gender identity. And I had known him for many years, and I asked him if I could have a conversation, and I had previously called a Republican friend of his who has a transgender son, who they're very close, but Jeff didn't know that. And I said to my friend, will you talk to Jeff? And then I asked Jeff, will you talk to this mutual friend, a longtime Republican? And they talked like in the middle of the night for like 2 hours. And he texted me the next morning and said, all right, thank you. I talked to him about his transgender son. I'm going to vote for this. don't do that to me again, please. You know, sort of. But it was, yeah.
There is,
and it's such an opportunity for our community too.
Speaking of common ground, no? In thinking about 2020, you've said, as you just mentioned, that the pathway to the presidency goes straight through Wisconsin, no? Okay,
Well, not necessarily straight through Wisconsin.
But you have to go through Wisconsin. And we learned that the hard way in the Hillary campaign.
Yes.
So, but I do feel like, even in this room, no, I feel like we live in a bubble. No, at least we're here in San Francisco and in New York City, and I think that we often overlook the importance of Midwestern states. Like, and I'm a victim of that. So can you help us understand why Wisconsin has the keys to the White House?
So there's a lot of reasons. One is, you know, when I saw a state that prides itself in its progressive roots. A century ago, the Progressive Party really started in the state of Wisconsin, and the progressive movement really started in the state of Wisconsin. And then I've seen that sort of coalition of folks who are willing to stand up to power, to stand up to the monopolies of the day, and elevate the people's voice, you know, become divided, et cetera. And I think that any presidential candidate who comes to our state, who shows up and talks about the issues that people are struggling with, is going to be able to win our state and the heartland, the upper Midwest, the industrial Midwest. So we make things. The first thing you mentioned was what you think about Wisconsin, cheese and beer, but we also make motorcycles, and we have shipyards. Yes, we're on the Great Lakes. We have, you know, just an incredible manufacturing sector and agricultural sector, and you know, hence the dairy farms and the cheese, et cetera. And working people are seeing the ill effects of, say, the tax measure that sent most of its benefits to the top, and they didn't see that trickle down to increase their wages or their ability to get ahead, and they're working so hard. And so it's focusing on issues like opportunity. It's focusing on health care and the folks who sit in fear that a child with a pre-existing health condition might not get covered because of what this administration and Republicans are doing. And
which in a way reflects really what every person is thinking about, no, and needs and wants.
Right.
Wisconsin is in some ways not so different from the rest of us,
Exactly.
which I think that's just hard to understand sometimes.
Oh, absolutely. And then it's engaging the people. So, you know, I just had a pretty tough election, all sorts of outside money coming out into Wisconsin, and we won with the highest margin we've seen in the state in decades. It was quite comforting. But one of the things that we never lost sight of was that in the days and months following Wisconsin narrowly electing Trump, all of these groups started becoming active, indivisible, Move On, the Women's March, March for Our Lives organizations, and organizing in communities that hadn't seen organization. And it wasn't like, I'm going to go join a campaign or the Democratic Party. It was, I'm going to figure out how I can be the strongest voice for change in my immediate community. And that's who we have to connect with. Mm-hmm. And that's who we have to say, I'm showing up here to fight by your side, and after a year and a half of doing that, I hope you'll vote for me. You know, elect our champions and stand up to our obstacles.
But what happens if, so something we learned in 2016 is, well, I guess we're still trying to figure out exactly how much influence Russian hackers had, no? We don't know. We know, but we don't know. How much, what do we have to do to build better ties between your world and the world of tech? No, because that's where innovation lies, but I don't see a lot of efforts being made from Washington, D.C. to really bring in this community and say, how do we do this?
So I think what you'll see in Congress right now is, and in fact we had a hearing on this yesterday in the Commerce Committee, but a focus on the big stories, and what our constituents talk to us about. So, you know, on the side of big tech has to do a better job of data privacy, cybersecurity, and vetting out foreign influence in our democracy. Congress has to do a much better job of understanding the technology, and I think of some of the recent hearings where, I'm not going to call anyone out on this, but sort of like not realizing they were asking this company a question that should really be, you know, not even getting those. So we have a learning curve. We have a learning curve on our side. But then I think in terms of if we're not just talking about setting policy, but we're talking about innovation in government, that we need to foster perhaps more fellowships of people being able to be immersed in agencies as they're dealing with their technology challenges, and also having the innovators and the big tech represented at the beginning of the conversation. I mean, think healthcare.gov. I'm not running to remind anyone of that moment, but I think, you know, a bunch of policy folks sat around a table and said, okay, and then we're going to want this website that, you know, allows however many millions of people to shop for insurance, et cetera. What if people with great technology skills had have been there at the beginning of that discussion, not at a handoff at some artificial place? And I think those things work much better.
I know we have to leave, but my question to you is, there's thousands of people here that look at you and I think want to see some form of them, no? And we all honor you and look up to you. So as a fighter, you know, as a trailblazer, as a first, what's your call to action for us? What do we do now?
Oh, well, it's sort of keeping on doing what you're doing, but I would say, you know, when I take in this room and am so inspired, I think also about how excited I am to see a whole new generation of people elected to particularly the House of Representatives, who are more diverse, more tech savvy. We have incredible communications reach, and whether it's passing the Equality Act and keeping involved between now and 2020 and beyond, my call to action is know your power, know how important your voice is, know that your life experience is unique and can inform not only your workplaces, but your communities, your state, your country, and the world.